the AGM proceedings. We are now about to start the expert panel discussion themed Unlocking Digital Trust, Navigating Security in a Connected World. Mr. Mohan Chaturanga will be the moderator of the day. He is the director of ISACA Sri Lanka and the head of GRC at Dallas. I will introduce the eminent professionals who have joined with us today. First, Mr. Damika Pallevatta. He is a banker by profession and currently serves as the Deputy General Manager of Wholesale Banking Group at Hutton National Bank PLC. He is also the Chairman of Lanka Ventures PLC and Chairman of LBL Energy Fund PLC. He is an MBA holder from the Postgraduate Institute of Management, University of Sri Jayewardenepura. He is a certified finance risk manager from Global Association of Risk Professionals. He is a fellow member of Chartered Institute of Management Accountants. The next professional is Mr. Jayanthan Fernando. Mr. Jayanthan Fernando is a digital law specialist who is a partner of Heritage Partners and who has contributed his knowledge to the profession not only in Sri Lanka but also in numerous countries for projects. He is a member of the ISACA Advisory Council and currently serves as a director at Sri Lanka Personal Data Protection Authority. The third professional is Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, currently serving as a monetary board member of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya is the immediate past secretary of the Bar Association of Sri Lanka. Mr. Amarasuriya is a board member of several state and private sector institutions, including the Sri Lanka Accounting and Auditing Standards Monitoring Board, the Standing Committee of Legal Studies of the UGC, and a council member of the University of Colombo. He is also the Sri Lankan country representative of the Commonwealth Legal Education Association and an executive committee member of Law Asia. Mr. Amarasuriya will be joining the session within a short while. I now invite all the distinguished panelists to take their seatings to the proceedings.
Hi everyone, thank you for the introduction and thank you for the panelists for being here today. It's quite okay, few minutes late. Thank you for volunteering your time around this. It might be busy schedules and we're expecting Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya to join us shortly. So just to give some context, I think Lakmal also mentioned around digital trust that what we have been doing and some of the conversations from ISACA, what we are planning to do in the next year around digital trust frameworks. That's one of the reasons that we wanted to have this panel discussion also aimed around that. And one of the key topics that has gone around for some time is when legislations, compliances, privacy acts, and cybersecurity operations, all these, how would you bind them together? And that is one of the concerns that ISACA is trying to address to digital trust frameworks. So that's why the whole theme is there for some of the initiatives that have been there in this year, plus in the next year initiatives. So with that background, I won't take much of time and would like to go into certain areas and maybe I'll start with Mr. Damit around just an icebreaker question for you. So to start off this, and the audience is pretty much the professionals who are from risk, cyber security, and related backgrounds. So most of our membership is from the banking and finance sector actually. Banking and finance sector actually. So in terms of digital trust, I think you have been an advocate for quite some time around this space, and you have been in this space as well, apart from being a business leader. So what are the trends in terms of digital trust, to kick off our conversation, that you would see there will have a lot of impact, and the need of it would be felt at the leadership level with your experience? What are those sections, what are those areas in banking that you would see a lot of movement?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Isaka, for having me. I think I have two legal experts. I would make sure I would not touch a legal clause because I'll get bored with two legal luminaries both sides of me. But I will point out few pointers from a business point of view why digital trust is important. Because if you see the trends that are in the banking industry specifically, there are multiple instances. You will recall on top of your mind, some serious things have happened. People lost confidence in the system. So, if I may list out few of them, we have seen digital transformation has been accelerating over the last few years. As a result, pandemic expediting a few of the things faster than we anticipated. So then that pushes a lot of energy and resources of banks in investing in cyber security and digital assets. So that increasing investment also exposes banks to different types of risks in cyberspace. Then also we have seen growth in mobile and mobile banking and digital payments. So that's another area that we have seen increasingly, becoming popular because our smartphone penetration is fairly high. We have seen growth, even though it brings confidence and it becomes a trend. Now use the smartphone to make payments. We have seen a lot of issues associated with it. With banks need to ensure robust security measures are done, data privacy is ensured, fraud prevention. So those are the, we need to do this to ensure that digital trust is inculcated in the users. Another trend that we see is biometric authentication is coming into being. Right? So earlier it is, just a SMS, OTP, something you get. Now it's going beyond that. And we have seen financial institutions and banks are increasingly into a trend. They incorporate biometric authentication as security measures. So we believe that will help, increasing the trust of the consumer will have that feeling. So it's only me that can operate my account. So then we see a trend in open banking and APIs. So that help networking, whatever your opportunities and the systems better. So if you want to open our databases to third parties, we need to ensure that those are secure. So the consumers or users of those systems is to feel confident and they need to have trust. Whilst we open our databases, so those APIs will be secure and their data will not be compromised in the process. Also, we have seen on the consumer experience side. So now the increasing trend is people anticipate it to be tailor-made. They don't want everything one size fits everybody kind of solutions in when you use digital. They anticipate everything will be tailor-made to be. So then what do banks needs to do to cater to that requirement? What risks it exposes whilst doing it is something that we will see increasingly. Also, finally, there are another aspects to it, that is we see a lot of collaboration with fintechs and neobanks. So earlier we have seen fintechs as competition. Now it's coming to a trend, it's no longer competition, we need to work in collaboration. So it's good to marry with them rather than going and fighting with them. So that's a trend that we will see emerging, and you will see continuously it will be the increasing trend, because they are so agile. They can maneuver through the regulations and conveniences so very well. So collaborating with them, banks increases their agility and connectivity and contribution to customer convenience. Those are the few trends that we see. There may be much more. I thought these may be very important things and very common things that we can highlight.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much on this one. So there is a lot of areas. Maybe in the next round we'll drill down to what are the key concern areas and some of the specifics around it. And while Mr. Jayant is here, usually you always answer the PDPA questions. So I just want to make a difference here. Maybe not exactly into PDPA. Maybe I would like to phrase that question in a different way. I think there's been a lot that you have been working on in the last, I don't know, maybe even more than a decade, right? On these legislations, and I think the one which we see the biggest impact is on the PDPA. On the outset, that we see as audience, as citizens, and people in the industry. So I would like to ask you a question in a broader sense. Out of those legislations that you have been working on so far, which one would you pick at the most of the impact, which you would pick as would have most impact going forward? What would be your pick?
Thank you, Umar. And I, in the outset, would like to congratulate and thank SACA Sri Lanka chapter for having this panel discussion on unlocking digital trust as part of their AGM proceeding. And as my good friend Rajiv also comes in, I'm mindful of the fact that our banking friend Ramit is surrounded by two lawyers. We will try not to stump one against the other. Right? It's wonderful that we are focusing on the subject of digital trust. More specifically, Mohan, on your question about the legal areas we have worked on, and maybe unfortunately more than 10 years, exactly 23 years, we have been working on a number of digital laws. Some of the most impactful in terms of banking finance, since the focus and your membership is largely representing that area, I would like to highlight the Payment and Settlement Systems Act of number 25 of 2000, number 28 of 2005, which actually set the tone and the legislative framework for a number of things. The check imaging truncation system that is managed by Lankapay, for example, or Lankapay, and the SLIPS, Sri Lanka Interbank Payment System, coupled with the SET, and now the API-based backend that we operate using what we call JustPay, that enables the fintech to plug and play their systems, including for direct debit mandates across accounts, right? Irrespective of the app, you can onboard multiple bank accounts. That model came through primarily from the Payment and Settlement Systems Act. To support that drive towards digital payment, the next major one in terms of impact on digital trust movement was the Electronic Transactions Act, which not only sets the legislative framework to recognize and give legal effect to digital documents, it also provides the framework for digital government, electronic contracts, but more important, from a trust perspective, Electronic Transactions Act is the founding legal instrument for digital signatures, which may be an underlying feature to facilitate security, confidentiality, non-repudiation. So the trust framework came from the Electronic Transactions Act of 2006. But knowing that the uptake will be so difficult, the infrastructure that had to be set up to make it realistic was going to be so difficult, before the regulatory framework stepped in, we made sure that we do an effective pilot. So based on the building blocks of the Payment and Settlement Systems Act, we encouraged Central Bank going back so many years ago to launch the digital signature framework as a pilot before the regulatory oversight was brought into operation. So Electronic Transactions Act, that part 4, deals with the oversight and the governance of that digital signature, digital authentication framework, was managed by a task force jointly chaired by Central Bank and Sri Lanka CERT. But it ran through a rigorous pilot enabling the practical use of the system, thereby every single bank connected to the system, and now not only the licensed commercial bank, but the non-banking financial institutions connected to the system have been given digital signatures from that Lanka Sign ecosystem. So that, I think, created a framework whereby the entire fintech digital payment ecosystem got a boost and created the landscape whereby the regulatory intervention came in later, and the country route CA was only launched on February 2020 on Valentine's Day, to be exact. No, right again, with some degree of seriousness, the whole day was consumed not by people having fun, but people having to go through a rigorous audit that was internationally vetted. So the Web Trust route CA was effectively launched on that day, and it took another few years of rigorous audits and compliance measures for the Lanka Sign system to become a formal sub-CA to the audit that happened in November last year. It's been a long, difficult journey, mainly due to the lack of people, but the legislative side, I think, other than the PDPA, these are the two key instruments I would put right at the top that enable a frontier for a fairly effective digital banking, fintech, progressive model, which has enabled all of us today to use our app and do direct transfers to any customer in any bank. So that's the significance we were able to achieve, and as of the reports last year, more than 5 to 6 trillion worth of transactions went through that system. And I'm proud to say that when the capital market, stock exchange system was going digital 1.5 years ago, the same system was customized and plugged into the Lanka Sign ecosystem, and a large number of young entrants came into the ecosystem through the stock exchange app, using a digital signing framework that was created to the bank.
Thank you, Jayanta. But before moving into the next one, I just have a follow-up question, a quick add-on to that. So we see a lot of impact in terms of digital transactions and adoption across the banks, and how we do digital transactions across the banks and integrations across. So if you compare that impact as 10x, what your guess on the PDPA in the next 3 to 5 years?
That's a hard question to answer, Mohan, because I will not be able to predict the regulatory interventions that will come from the new data protection authority. We have had a lot of interactions with the Monterey Board, Mr. Naponsic and the team, as well as some of the deputy governors and the governor, about regulatory collaboration with central bank and SEC, insurance board and others. But Mohan, just a thought I just want to mark in terms of it's a difficult comparison to do, because on the one hand, electronic transactions and payment and settlement systems act were enablers to boost the drive in the payments ecosystem. It was largely driven thanks to the dynamism of the banking. It was very focused on a sector. But if you look at the PDPA program, it is so diverse, it cuts across banking finance to health, to governmental entities which are supposed to perform functions similar to managing personnel, to everything else, to supermarkets, to airlines, including visitors coming to our country from different parts of the world. Right? So, given the lack of a constitutional mandate recognizing privacy as a right, whilst right to information is a fundamental right, so right to privacy is not yet. And I know people like Rajiv and many others are working towards that from the constitutional law reform area. Without that kind of a framework, giving that entitlement, the right to privacy, data privacy, they are starting from rock bottom, from a very basic kind of a scenario and taking baby steps. So my view is that this law is just the beginning that will trigger a lot of positive kind of developments to create trust and confidence in end users to use digital products and services. And when I talk about PDPA, I often tell our co-regulators not to look at the PDPA as a punishment tool. And in that light, in the preamble, we have included very clear statements saying, A, that the PDPA was necessary to facilitate growth and innovation in the digital economy, and B, that the regulators of PDPA are supposed to work not in isolation but in collaboration with other regulators to develop an ecosystem. So uptake on this in conclusion is going to be a long journey, and I can't predict how long this will take, but I think we have to be patient until awareness, and that's where ISACA plays a big role. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much. And I can remember even in 2018, some of us who were doing the GDPR at that time initially gave the review saying that it was quite a leap. And yeah, that's one of the sentiment that we had at that time as well. Thank you very much. And we would like to welcome Rajiv. So thank you for joining us in a very busy schedule. And I think the discussion has been around banking trends, digital trust, around I think Amit was explaining around what are the most of the trends that would have impact on digital trust related to banking and financial trends. Then we move to the supplement around legislation. So I'd like to start with you with that adoption being there, and then at the same time there's legislation moving around. From a regulator point of view, from a central bank point of view, what kind of facilitation is it's a country where overnight we adopted QR, right? So in that kind of context, if this adoption is going to be very large in the coming years, what kind of frameworks, what kind of mechanisms are you looking at when getting to make sure that with the adoption being balanced with the compliance and having the right development in digital trust?
Thank you, Mohan. Sorry, I different event. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. I must just say at the beginning, I expressed my opinion that it's not the central bank, it's my personal view. And also keep in mind I just started working on some of these things are still digital trust is very important area which one must look at. And if you look at the total global cost and loss revenue by cyber tax, that is estimated 2025 is US dollar 10.5 trillion. That's an enormous figure. And the ransomware cost by 2031 is expected to reach US dollar 205 billion. The new attack on a business. So it's really evolving and dynamic areas one is to address. And as you know, in a perfect digital trust landscape, consumers must have comfort and confidence that their practices and their actions they take in digital space can be done without any fear of loss or damage. If one looks at Sri Lanka's conversion to digital financial services, it has been impressive in the last decade. We saw a sudden increase of close to 100 times. And we have seen, one could say we have seen phenomenal growth to that extent. And it is due to the financial services industry which has used and presented options, of course the tech companies, solution providers, and of course the regulators, the central bank and other regulators. The central bank has an active role to play in promoting the safe and responsible use of digital technology. That is an important responsibility. If you recall, in 2020, the central bank designated year activity share of digital transactions. That was to build awareness and encourage public from digital conversion. From governance and supervisory perspective, and that is the perspective of your just question, the central bank provides guidance to financial institutions through the creation of regulated direction and guidelines. Now, Dan spoke of the underlying legal statutes and networks which are passed by Parliament. But central bank, being the primary regulator of financial sector, is empowered, as you know, to come out with regulation guidelines and then set up the regulatory framework. So, in 2021, the central bank issued the regulatory framework on technology risk management and resilience for licensing. That covers a large spectrum of what we are discussing. A similar framework was introduced for licensed finance companies in 2022. And then prior to that, in 2020, the central bank introduced guidelines on minimum compliance standards for payment related to this. Having said that, I think we all agree that regulators must be robust, and especially this tech space is something that changes not 5 months ago per year, but every day. And to that extent, the view of the regulators is that one cannot regulate the technology, but you need to regulate the transactions and what you want to do. And from there on, the technology captures. So it is in that space that the central bank is looking at this. Of course, there's lots of central bank also learn from going on. I think there needs to be dialogue and discussion, sharing information. All of that is essential. So that is the overall function of central bank in this regulatory space.
So, with that insight, maybe we can go to another round and want to have a more than technical question, a human moment from that around. So one of my experiences was that after a very large security incident, one of the board members came to me and asked after fixing after doing the whole remediation was that, can I fall asleep at night at peace after this? So a very simple question. So I think you explained about a lot of digital trends, a lot of integrations that will happen. What would make you not feel a good sleep at night in terms of digital trust? What still think are the most concerning areas for you? Maybe not at, it could be a personal perspective or it could be a professional perspective. What would make you not fall asleep at night?
Bluetooth connected.
Very interesting question. Maybe more than me, maybe it's interesting for you to know what is happening. So like the banks are innovating and bringing in technology, the fraudsters are one step ahead. They are always smarter than doing something and introducing something better than what we are doing all the time. So there are a few things, maybe I can list 10 things which keeps me awake in the night. But maybe I have selected 2-3 things which are important even for you all to know what is happening. So this every day the fraudsters becoming more sophisticated, cyber attacks becoming innovative, right? So that means we need to keep innovating to counter them. One of the latest things that keeps us awake is what is called subscriber identity module swap. We call it SIM swap. That is happening quite frequently. That is, individual who is unauthorized individual going and convincing a mobile operator to take somebody else's mobile number to a new SIM. It can happen to you. They will go and somehow convince the mobile operator. They know your mobile number, they know you have an account. They get your mobile number into a new SIM. The victim doesn't know until all his funds have been taken out of his account. There are multiple things we can do. Main thing being we need to be in contact and collaboration with network operators. So once we have lobbied very hard that when you are given a mobile, you also need to do a proper KYC as you open a bank account. Now the importance of that being realized. Most of the time it's more linear than opening a bank account. Now the bank accounts are, because the digital economy is so connected, that impacts the banking sector and your funds in your account without you knowing that whether it's available or not. The risk is that we think we lock, when we go after work, we lock our room and lock the doors and go. When we come back tomorrow morning, we doesn't know the most important asset we have is in the bank or not, which is information. And digital, whatever you have it in digital form, we can lose overnight because of these kind of things. So, SIM swap is something that keeps us awake at night. And the second thing may be common in your organizations as well. Insider threat and employee misconduct. You can't set policies, you can't set controls to prevent deliberate acts. Employees can get together and pass on information to third parties or whoever it is who can clean your account in no time. So that is a key risk, that whatever you can do, whatever you do, still there can be a bad spark somewhere who get together, group few people and wash away all your money no time. The third thing is common. We see a lot of cyber attacks happening. You name it, ransomware, DDoS, whatever it is. It collapses the financial system. It allows no transaction to happen immediately in the next second or next week. So it can block anything happening. Assume what can happen if something blocks from happening transaction in the next 15 minutes. What is our response capacity? what have we done to prevent that? Is it enough? Our people deploy the right technology, we have the right skill to identify that. So there are multiple challenges around that. So if you look at only these three things, that will, facilitate non-sleep 365 days a year, because it's that serious. Because we are custodian for people's money. We have a whole heap of information which can be used in multiple other places to maybe bring people to disrepute, maybe for various other life-threatening incidents. So we need to protect. So there are threats that are coming to protect, will keep us away all the time. So that maybe these three would be good enough for them to understand how serious and challenging situations we are in as that.
That is quite interesting perspective. Thank you very much. And one of the things I want to pick up on that is when you say inside that one of the digital trust principles is that the organization and people, the connecting controls are linked with this other is the culture. So this is the first time a culture comes as a control. So how do you make a culture of zero trust itself as a control? So this could be different the way that we run organizations as well going forward. So with that, I'll move on to Jonathan for an interesting question. I think most of the time your audience must have been decision makers and the stakeholders of the organizations, regulators around the personal data protection act. So right now today, the audience that you're seeing is people who will be actually implementing this organization, people who will take the legislation and run that compliance program on the ground. And probably they must have been the people who have been already tasked to do that in the organization. So if you pick three things, so we have part one, part two, and all these areas, multiple controls, multiple areas. But if you pick three things that would get them most closest to the compliance, what would you do?
Yeah. So thank you, Mohan, for that, and thanks for setting the stage for that. I don't remember who said this, but someone once said that privacy and security are two sides of the same coin. I say that, and I all due respect, I somewhat agree with that statement. I don't necessarily say that it would apply in all instances, but I would strongly and respectfully state that there is interconnection between the two. You can't have one without the other, right? In that context, if you look at the PDP, one of the interesting aspects of the PDPA is that whilst it recognizes the regulatory framework that will govern processing of personal data has been defined to be personal identifiers. Processing is broadly defined to cover the range of activities you could do with PII, including archival, storage, including in cloud, dissemination, erasure, and last, arithmetical and logical operations, which would cover AI. Now, if you look at that broad set of simply formulated regulatory stacks in here, we have a bit of a light touch towards regulation, no doubt. One of the primary focus areas is the principles of processing, which talks about what would constitute lawful processing of personal data, and principles such as a purpose specification, purpose limitation, and ensuring accuracy. And somewhere down the line, in part one of the act, it talks about the obligation on a regulated entity, maybe a controller, to maintain integrity and confidentiality. Now, in the context of the vast names now, I would think that that's one area in which the intersect between privacy and security comes in, whereby the security professionals would have a huge amount of work in that area, because in time to come, the regulator is supposed to formulate regulations prescribing the access control and other measures to prevent unauthorized and unlawful processing of personal data and to prevent loss, destruction, or damage to personal data. Area, my question from the National Bank, just that area that keeps him awake sometimes. As a deterrent, with the sanction-based regime, because this law has penalties kicking in, but of course preceded by directives that will enable the violating party to do course corrections. We have those soft law measures built in, but from a security professional perspective, and I think this is where ISAFA and other entities can play a huge role, is to build the capacity and knowledge through your certification programs to make available teams that will ensure that pretty much compliance, which is an important step. Now, before I conclude, now that we have Rajiv here with us and another banker here with us, Rajiv will refer to the risk resilience direction, and from a data protection perspective, we have in recent times lobbied the government and senior management of Central Bank to revisit that, because that has certain areas which will conflict with the Data Protection Act, and in the event of a conflict, the Data Protection Act supersedes in respect of protecting personal data. But nevertheless, that direction contains some useful aspects in terms of cloud hosting and recognizes the ISO standards, both 27001 and 27017 compliance requirements that have to be met. So if all, I mean, I would prefer if these are not looked at in isolation, and if you want to create a broader ecosystem of digital trust, all these have to be connected to support a country transformation in its digital journey, and taking into consideration the protection measures,
side. Given the critical attack on the structure of some areas. If one looks at the governance framework on funding regulations, now there are requirements, for example, of establishing a information security committee as the apex management body of the respective institution to ensure and be responsible for information security and economic resilience. Then the appointment of CISO, something also brought through by the regulation. Identify information systems for the definition of critical information systems. Like that. And of course ensure compliance with the other requirements and framework and all the others. If one looks at now the editor governance, so if you look at the information security measures that the regulations require licensed banks to apply with, there is an essential requirement that critical staff are properly trained and skilled within the requirements. You know, the one says skilled, that means also to update the knowledge on a regular basis. That's even changes. Of course, like there are other regulations such as applying user access management systems, implementation of computer security and user activity management policies, specify all electronic maintained database bases on information sensitivity and of course this exposure, customer data encryption, so on and so forth. So all of that is found within these regulations. And then if one looks at this from the information system development and disaster recovery provisions, one finds provisions ensuring that critical information is not required in the critical information system to achieve a high level of system availability, implement disaster recovery arrangements, disaster recovery activation, and disaster recovery testing, and the establishment of backup and recovery policies. If you get it from staff competency, again there is need for training, but also to ensure at least a minimum number of staff with eligible qualifications are employed, and technology risk management and internal audit functions are programmed. So in response to your question, I think we have a hybrid framework. I think these are things which one should look at going forward. It's a evolving space, and I think the regulations, John mentioned that there's now need to make some parallel connection with the Data Protection Act, and that's something which is not a piece of legislation one needs to do now too. Act coming to play. So I think these will be revisited and looked at. And from what we have now, we have the regulations in place. I think the central bank is open to looking at, being more robust. And the objective of the bank is of course to facilitate the industry. We cannot take a conservative approach. We need to facilitate the industry to do business. And of course ensure that there is safety, security of transactions, and of course look at the public and customer interest.
Alright, thanks, Azim. So before we move on to any rounds more, I would like to, since in the interest of time, ask the audience, maybe we'd like to take some questions from you. Y'all, if you have any clarifications, I think, let me send the mic there. Suresh?
So, first of all, good evening to everybody, and thank you for the very insightful panel discussion. And basically, my question is for Rajiv, and mainly I would like to ask, digital payments also works with digital trust, right? So, when we all know that globally, payments have been evolving into different aspects, especially the blockchain-based payments and different technologies adapted. So, would like to ask a question from Rajiv in terms of the regulator point of view. What is the readiness of the Sri Lankan banking sector, especially in adapting the smart contracts? And we talk about the electronic contracts and all. So when are we gonna reach there, and what is our level? Because we all know that when we enable this kind of payment, the cost is gonna be really effective, and also the integrations between the global networks gonna be will have evolved too much, where we are also quite behind sometimes when it comes to the global context. So would like to get that your opinion, and where are we, and probably the roadmap around it. Thank you very much.
On the digital payments ecosystem, I would think that we are very much in space, and there is robust comprehensive framework. On the e-contract, I think Jananta might be in a better position to answer that question, but I think we are moving towards that. Timelines, of course, I'm not too aware of. What are we looking at? Yes. So it's something we have been talking about for now, I don't know, 10, 15 years. But adoption, I'm also not in a position to give you a specific answer on timelines. It's not something I will look at, but what is your opinion?
Suresh, thank you very much for that question. So there are a couple of things here. Now, to take on blockchain, whether Sri Lankan banking industry is ready. So, what percentage of or what portion of people involved in transaction understand why we need to bring distributed ledger technology, which is blockchain, and how many nodes that we need to connect to make one transaction happen. So basically what it does, it eliminates the middleman. You don't want a middleman if you have a blockchain. So I think the Sri Lankan law or the regulation is not ready yet to eliminate the middle. So technology can come in. Technology can make attempts to connect the nodes. Say for example, if I may cite a use case, say somebody wants to do an export. During this transaction, there are multiple parties involved. So you have your logistics partner, you have your insurer, you have the customs, you have the bank, you have the regulator, then you have all the parties on the other side of the transaction. The shipper, the buyer's bank, buyer's. So all of these people have to be in that network. And those nodes need to be connected, and you need to be able to define which jurisdiction the transaction happens. Technology facilitation is one thing. Having the legal framework around that is another thing. So we have been trying to, induce some transaction, having conversation with various parties. So we find it is very slow moving. You are right, Jan, the adoption is becoming challenging. That is only one use case. There are better use cases. If you want to do KYC better. So this is a beautiful, fabulous platform if somebody can implement right laws and the right technology. So these, I think we can learn a lot from other markets who have adopted these technologies. So the benefit that accrues to everybody of us, your transaction costs become a fraction of what you are having now. I would say 80% of your transaction costs get eliminated. If you do right implementation of blockchain, right technology with right paper. So that's my 2 cents on blockchain.
Thanks, Amit. Thanks, Rajiv, for your response, and thank you for your excellent question. Let's speak here about something. I thank Amit for giving some practical aspects to that. And I agree with Rajiv on the fact that adoption is taking time, perhaps due to lack of awareness. So one point I would respect to disagree with Amit with regard to a lack of a law, again due to the lack of awareness. Just want to flag an important provision in the Electronic Transactions Act, which was amended in 2017 to be compatible
with the international gold standard on digital transactions, namely the UN Electronic Communications Convention, which enables Sri Lanka to have a reciprocal arrangement with Singapore in the Singapore-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement. And one particular clause we introduced through the amending Act number 25 of 2017 is exactly addressing the point connected with blockchain that Damit mentioned and the smart contract aspect that you brought in. So if I have to illustrate, I can go on for nearly about half an hour explaining the provisions, but two highlights. In the context of an offer and an acceptance, the fact that it can be done electronically, digitally, and requirement not to insist on a paper-based confirmation is the underlying principle you get in the first instance. Now, if you move down the electronic contracts chapter in the Electronic Transactions Act, there is a clear provision enabling contractual cycles to occur through automated systems without human intervention. So the point Amit mentioned, the area where one can get away with the middleman is already provided in our law. What needs to be done, and I'm thankful for Isaka for organizing these kinds of forums for you guys, and Raju is doing a lot trying to build capacity in the legal sector through continuing legal education programs. You did a fantastic job as Secretary of the ESL. You need to bring this message across. One of us cannot do it. That there is a provision enabling it, just go for it and use it. And I can give examples, at least in the area of trade finance, where it is practically being used. But I would agree with you on one small aspect of a smart contractual cycle, where in a smart contract you have default codes that will actually get the lawyer out of your way. And many lawyers, when we were trying to introduce that provision, I remember in 2006 and 2013, we were trying to amend it, and we had a forum, and there was a bit of a backlash that I also had from my friends, including 4 or 5 business counsel at the time, because a smart contract would have defaults to determine the modalities of a contractual cycle and to determine where performance would happen without having to go to a lawyer, and certain measures will trigger in. But I would argue that the Electronic Transactions Act provisions which enable automated messaging contractual cycles to occur can be adapted to a blockchain environment. And taking one step further, our PDPA, in terms of refusal, in terms of data subject rights, recognizes the technical feasibility as the basis for refusal. So if you are using PII and related aspects or KYC related issues which are managed through blockchain, and it is technically not feasible for you to accede to a request of a data subject, the law recognizes in section 17 the inability to comply on the basis of not being technically feasible to use. Recognizing the fact that in other countries, blockchain and other use there, you cannot have erasure of records. So there are enabling tools. My conclusion here in our situation is that there are enabling tools. We need more awareness and education of how to use it. And as the trademark of Nike, and Nike, but it says just do it, right? So we don't need to kind of just do it and see the result there. Thank you.
On the lighter note, and had, don't ever think that you can get lawyers out of the system. only solution is to find a different role for the lawyer in this case.
Thank you for that, Raju. And
And in the interest of time, we'll probably take one more, and so for the planned time, so we'll take one more question, I think. Sure.
I would like to take your attention to two cases which are, one is technical, one is general. I went to a bank in this country to link my accounts to online platform. They have online platform. And they were asking for indemnity from me to transfer the entire risk of any cyber security issues to me actually. The bank doesn't want to take any risk factor of that, and they say that they are not liable in case if something goes wrong in the cyberspace and so on and so forth. Then I thought I'm not going to link my account because why should I do that? Because the bank should take certain up to a certain level of responsibility and the risk for that. So this, though we are talking about digital trust, then there is no even human trust in that. So therefore I thought, no, I'm not going to raise. But I'm working with certain overseas banks also. They take their risk actually in writing they are giving. In case if something goes wrong in the cyber security on the investigation, if there is no kind of a sort of quality of a customer, so the bank will take the risk and do whatever necessary. So this is one. The second thing is very interesting. On the social media, recently, one has been reported a fraud with online banking. Actually, what has happened? But actually, the complaint is very clear. He has given all the details and even the letters written to the bank. So that particular branch, I used to have a account in that branch. Then I verified it from the branch manager. There is something like this. Do you know about that? He said yes. But not before that. What has happened was they have a SIM certificate. He has taken the details of that. One guy has contacted a telecommunication company and very easily he has taken the SIM and then opened an account, transferred that person's money. It's a USD money to this particular person. And then he has written to the bank, he has written to CID, he has written to central bank. Nothing has happened. All the letters were published. So this is the ground level. I think we all must remember that the confidential of the digital trust or whatever that should be built into the society. Otherwise, things may not happen. No? So I just want to mention this together. One is technical, one is maybe a legal, right?
Alright, any comments on any comments around that, any experiences you want to share? Would have a question rather the sentiment around how the experiences there?
I think that issue is not to do with the space, but I think as a Sri Lankan society, there's a trust that things are very loose. You can get a SIM, you can go into the SIM and shop it, and that means that system is not in place at the telecommunications supplier or provider. You can get a lot of things done. If the person who comes, you are properly dressed, they wrote two verifications, and maybe things will get done in this country. So quite apart from the financial space, if you are going to work with other entities, and also there's risk coming from other entities, that has to now be extended to those institutions as well. In response to your first question, of course we are a small country, a small market, and of course if it's one person asking the bank offload system to a provider which one has not probably done this due diligence on the tester, and if in fact like SIM swapping, this information goes out, one cannot hold the bank responsible. So unless there are maybe larger countries who have other providers who are recognized, who have relationships, who have brought contracts together with. So that's obviously a practical difficulty.
are part of the trade.
Sure.
Bank has actually changed the user ID and the password. Why can't we hold the bank responsible? Actually, the bank is responsible part of that, right? Because bank has to give a proper detailed document where the risk lies and on what particular activity. Asking for an indemnity from the customer, saying that the customer has to take all the risk, something goes wrong, is not acceptable. Not acceptable. Because these things are not happening in other banks in overseas. I have to say very clearly.
So I think so Kanishka gave as an example of just
It was actually enlarging the example Lionel gave.
so I think Lionel expanded on what you said by giving an example of a practical scenario. One of the uncertainties that have arisen, and I agree with Rajiv, due to the market size perhaps and the inability of entities to take the hit and the liability maybe process may be built. So one of the issues that keep popping up is the lack of a kind of a clear cyber hygienic environment with the entire ecosystem with the regulatory matrix, right? So to address that, and this is something I deliberately skipped for a number of reasons from addressing, is the hot topic nowadays, taking into consideration what happened in Parliament these days, the cybersecurity bill, right, which went through multiple iterations and side by side with the cybersecurity bill, which addresses these areas through identifying critical information infrastructure, which will have to adhere to minimum compliance standards which are globally compatible, thereby giving the customer the assurance and the safety with regard to the levels through which they can go through. So that is the whole ecosystem driven. But the problem is that at the moment it's been challenging to get this closed because of the defense cyber bill also coming in the way. But thankfully, due to certain recent interventions, that issue has been resolved, and both bills are expected to be finalized, and I hope they will go through public consultation for you all to comment.
Actually, I showed that particular bag when they were asking me from the indemnity. I got from the overseas bank where I have certain accounts.
Yeah.
Look here, this is how the banks are working with customers.
Right? So they are standards driven.
Yeah, standard, and also there are certain authorities are there, they are supervising all these kind of issues and giving what we call the solutions to the customers. But here, it's not that, no? So therefore, people don't want to connect their accounts to. Alright. This is what the situation. I have two questions for you. One is, when is this data protection act, the data controllers and all that being activated? All that
So Kanishka, so basically, there is no need to activate anything for data controllers to be identified. You are simply collecting
and infrastructure which has been funded by the government. When is that coming into place?
So let me clarify. So the controller, which is regulated, and the processor, which is regulated, the two kinds of entities, they have been identified. So if you are collecting and deciding how you are processing data, you are automatically caught up into the regulatory framework of this act. But in terms of when it is coming into effect, there was a gazette, I think, issued in January 2025 saying that the entire law will come into operation and be enforced from 18th March 2025. So that those are the dates which have been announced.
When you're outsourcing stuff to Sri Lanka, those principles actually check and see our law here. When that is not being made effective, they go somewhere else.
Exactly. So that is the reason why the government, I think, has set up the regulatory framework now. They have set up a brand new regulator called the Data Protection Authority, but I think you will understand the context of economic. Yes. So the funding was approved in the last budget, to my knowledge. But we have to understand in the context of an economic revival scenario, this funding has been linked to certain overseas instruments as well. And it is expected that the staffing approval will happen in the second quarter. And that's why.
the private sector is ready to fund it.
Maybe that will be the public-private partnership.
Can I add another one point?
Yeah, quick one,
Now, what is lacking is the relevant procedures and the infrastructure facilities and all that happen on whatever defined by the law, right? So therefore the law is not getting implemented.
So basically implementation.
That's the point that I was.
So I think there's a fellowship waiting. We can have these wonderful conversations for a long time. So we can continue the conversation, of course, but I think a lot of people are waiting. So we take the time to move on and conclude on the discussion, and it has been a good one. Thank you very much, Jata. Thank you very much, Dhawan. Thank you very much for taking our invitation and taking a very good time to join us here. And I think if you have any more further questions, I think gentlemen will be here around. So please do feel free to reach them and have your clarifications verified. Thank you very much once again for joining here, and thank you everyone for joining for the panel discussion as well.